Because basically, when you speak up, they can't monetize any of those instruments on your account, even though their account is a closed account. See, the power is their capacity to claim lordship tenures over your estate. That's why it's important for people to comprehend here and here that you're standing on the rock. If you don't comprehend that, your concept of looking at all this stuff will be absolutely wrong. And then, this is also why it's dangerous for Moors to approach this thing from the European perspective, the freedman's perspective. They're two different statuses because the sovereign right that they're claiming doesn't belong to them. It's like you or me going to China and claiming to be the sovereign. No, you ain't. And just because some generations have passed, they're still colonists. That's who they are. They're Europeans claiming to be Americans. So therefore their status is what? Void in the first instance. See, because that's what the colonization is the theft of your birthright. And I think a lot of times when people look at this thing, they only look at exploitation from an attitude perspective. They're not recognizing that it has legal and estate implications. They don't look at it with that concept. They look at it as an attitude of them mistreating us, and we got to get them to stop mistreating us. And that's not it. They're claiming your estate.
I'm saying, like when you tell somebody else that, they think they're like, oh, you better not milk no white boy. They ain't going.
Yeah. And the whole deal of this, that's why they claim to be white guys, but they ain't.
Yeah.
We are.
We three white people.
And so they traded places with us. But this is also why it's important for our people to really understand what's going on, because their concepts are wrong. And as long as they can get us to keep on picking up the dogmatic code systems, the connotative linguistics, then we ourselves are what you would call projecting a confirmation of their position. Because we're really the heirs of the estate. The problem of it is we're incompetent because our people don't know they're the heirs of the estate. We're always talking from a beggar position. You can start some Negro program to make sure we got some chips. And then we start marching and praying all over the place. And we're the heirs of the entire estate. And we're talking like the janitor of the garage.
What did you say again about sign as
Oh, we're gonna put that on the board. I'm just talking loosely right now. But ask the questions, that's so when the people come in so we can all benefit. Because the subject matter, all the questions really boil down to estate. And what we want to make sure when we share the information with each other is that we comprehend that that's what we're talking about. And when certain questions are asked and you don't know that you're really talking about your estate, that means your concept of looking at the answers may not be correct. Or even your concept, I'm good, thank you so much. They look like crunchy.
Okay, because they foreclosed on my house. I filed bankruptcy. They foreclosed on my house. I filed bankruptcy. But then
in the mic.
Yeah. But if you go to the county court and look under the deed, it's still got my name on it, even though the bank.
Because it's yours. Listen, you're going to talk again. Make sure that the audience gets this. This is why every once in a while I go over this. Remember, it's your estate. They're accusing you of abandoning your estate. Are we clear?
Yeah.
Now,
even though
write this down.
With this.
No, I want you to back up because we're going. When we start, we're going to get this on tape because it's important. Because people outside the country and people around the country will look at this information and it will give them a background, even though it may not be directed on the subject matter. So wait, we're going to put it on tape. both the question and the answer.
Okay. Now I was giving you some. I'm with you on a lot of what you're saying because when they sold the property, they published it in the newspaper, in the county paper.
Yeah.
And listening to what you were saying, I was supposed to then.
That's why this is why we emphasize, and we can't emphasize enough, that when you're corresponding with them, this is what we're going to have to do as a standard with us. Make sure y'all take it back to Little Egypt, right? Organize, even with yourself. You understand? Set up a website that's only for publishing your legal correspondences with the corporate state entities. When they're corresponding with you and they're sending things, constructs through the mail to you, when they send it, you construct it, give qualifications, subtitles, or footnotes, and put it on the site. When you send out to them, then you sequence it, meaning that if I never met you, right? Whereas I'm going on a website, just like a newspaper, I can look the sequence of their initial entries to you and your correspondences. So it leaves both the chronology / dates and the nature of their correspondence is not left vague. There's nothing missing. It's exposed to the public eye. Do you understand? They can't hide. Keep in mind, the fundamental operations of the U.S. democracy system of the post-militia operates from the perspective that they know that what they're corresponding to you usually stays within a small pocket, with you stressed out and worried and drinking 2 cups of coffee trying to figure out how to respond, or how to pay up or give up your property, right?
Yeah.
And then if you're really under real pressure, out of ignorance and a lack of knowledge, you go hire a barrister of England thinking that he's going to represent you, and he rapes you some more because you don't know he's an officer of the court. And all he is a bounty man with a tie that you just paid.
That's what
And a
happened.
spy.
Exactly what
Oh,
happened.
I already know what happened. But you need to know what happened.
You leave your property.
But you need to know what happened.
Yeah.
You see the whole point?
Yeah.
And from the beginning, they're operating from the perspective that you're a ward. Now, if you have bought, or what you call transacted business, in the European name or cognomen without qualification or without a title of the heir to the estate, you don't own it in the first place. Your share property. You need to know that in the first instance. It's not, this is where it's the duty and the responsibility of those grand sheiks around this country who's been delivered this information and charged with the duty of dispensing it to the heirs of the estate, which is the restoration of the birthright. However, you already know, and I already know, that most of the such persons have not done that. Instead, they have been making people followers of themselves and telling people this was religion, when it's actually a return of the birthright. Do you understand? And so this corruption has caused us to go a 100-year cycle and suffering in areas that shouldn't even be taking place right now. Therefore, for the few who are honest to what this movement is about, it must be explained what's going on so that you don't go through that. So what do? They steal your estate, and you paid more fiat in the process, and they still steal your estate. Not knowing that the foundation of the problem is your status. You see? And that you didn't even know you had an estate. Go ahead. We're going to repeat this for the record because about 7 we're going to start officially.
Todd, another thing they did was they refused to cut the gas off in my name.
Sure.
It's still in my name. I called the gas company,
And
they told me in order for them to cut the gas off, I have to give them access to the place. I said, well, they done locked me up.
Now, do you understand estate law fundamentally?
No.
Do you understand sharecropping fundamentally?
I mean, my
Just
grandfather.
in general, how do you feel?
Except my
What are your
grandfather
thoughts on sharecropping?
It's a robbery.
Get in the mic. Well, we know it's robbery, but what is it? Come on, just talk. What does your consciousness tell you? In other words, use your basic common sense and talk about what you think sharecropping is.
Sharecropping is when you allowing somebody to live on your property and they paying you interest on whatever y'all producing.
No, this is what it is. Sharecropping is a feudal law system, whereas they rob you of your land and estate, put it in their trust, and then rent your land or estate back to you as a tenant or franchisee under privilege, and thereby steal all your labors and your energies until you're no longer useful to them. Then they boot you off the land. And then find another serf. Connotatively, we call them slaves now, but there's a misused word, but for what its connotative meaning is, that's what's happening to you. That's what happens to people over and over again. But because in reality, it is your estate. You just don't know yourself, and you don't know the truth of the land. That's why your name continues, because they're leaning it against your estate. They're acting as trustees on your estate. Therefore, what you say don't count. What they say counts. It is no different than a parent is telling a child that's a drug addict, this is what's going to happen. He said, how can they get my room to Fred? Because they said so. You kind of understand? It ain't about justice. It's about abuse of authority under forfeiture. Forfeiture is a feudal law title for a trustee. This is what's happening. This is why it's so important. You know, we can't emphasize enough. And interesting, like last night, I did a radio show with Sister Yafa. Yeah. On Civil Alert. And a lot of this stuff, the same dynamics are always involved. And a lot of the people have a lot of information. This is redundant. What is continual is that you recognize people are well studied in a lot of information. But not enough people have crossed the threshold of spiritually really knowing who they are. They're approaching a lot of remedies from a point of the letter perspective. This says this, 1 and 1 equals 2. I know 1 and 1 equals 2, but the spirit of connection is not quite there. When the spirit of connection becomes there, you need no paper. Although you may put something on paper. It'll come out your mouth as soon as you open it. That's where we need to get you at. That's where you need to be. That's what we're trying to achieve. We're trying to smack you around a little bit because you already know the answers. It's just that by us being under the mystery system for so many generations and then messing with our gene pool, that our people's pineal gland is a little bit blocked. And so we're trying to get the people unconstipated on a spiritual level so you can answer your own questions by giving you things to remember. But the memory is in another time, in another body. But you're not new. And so we kind of smack you around because Rome is beating you up. Us up.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. You keep saying when we officially start, we try to figure out when you can officially
I was figuring when you're ready.
We're ready.
All right, let's ready.
We're ready.
Now, we're going to back up. We're going to... Don't take them shoes. You know they're going to steal your shoes. Sis can't pick me up, right? And she had her slippers on, right? And so she said, you know, I got 6-inch heels there. I said, you do all right? I seen her get out of the car. I said, Don't put them slippers back on because you ain't going to get them shoes back. Somebody's going to take them kicks. Them kicks are tight, ain't they?
Yeah, they tight.
Yeah. All right, Islam. I don't even picking on you, but all right, you got it going on.
Islam family.
Islam.
It's
Here.
no, it's just not pushed on. Push the button. Green. Turn it off. That's okay. Islam family.
Islam.
Just like to welcome you here for another one of our bi-monthly sessions with Master Educator Tarik Bey. And this man, who I want to say that he is so sought after. The knowledge that he contains in this frame, and he talked about, heard him just saying something about who you used to be. You knew a lot of things, but you were in another body. The knowledge and the wealth of knowledge that is contained in his physical being is phenomenal. I say that because many of you who I see sitting here come here time after time just to make sure you are getting what comes out of this man. He could sit here and just stand here and just rattle it off, like it's just, just talking normal, regular. And many of us, our heads spin. Not everybody. Some of you are astute, or just about, as our brother Taj. But what I'm saying is people travel far and near to hear him. And I'm happy that not only that you're supporting our brother Tarik Bey and his commitment to House of Ram, but that you too have committed to House of Ram by coming and showing your support. So without further ado, I want to present our master teacher, our master educator, Tarik Bey.
First, I want to read a small verse from the Book of the Sun, the Heliotext, known the most as the Bible. And I'm going to go into the Revelation, and we're going to talk a few things, understanding that the foundation of this is Kabbalistic. So understand this is allegorical, are we clear? But if you don't know that it's allegorical, your concepts will be wrong. So let's go into the geometry and math of it, all right? You all got this? You got this? We're going to erase this. All right. Can somebody do me a favor and
I guess.
work this out while I prepare this? So let's look at the book of Revelation, chapter 12 and chapter 13, and we're going to take some points from them. And I want you, while we're going through this, to go into the square. The square is the cube, or the cube is also being on the square, but the square is in a circle. So think on that level, because this is absolutely Kabbalistic. Are we clear? So I'm qualifying before I go into the book so it doesn't put you to sleep. All right? Well, the Book of the Sun, the Heliotext, the Holy Bible. Chapter 12 of the book of Revelation, and the dragon overcomes of the beast with the 7 heads. And there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 7 stars. And she, being with child, cried, travailing in birth and pained to be delivered. And there appeared another woman in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns upon his head. And his tail drew the thin part of the stars of heaven, and did cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman, which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. As soon as it was born. As soon as it was born. Kabbalah in the square.
What chapter was that?
This is chapter 12, verse 1, 2, 3, 4 of the book of Revelation. Verse 5. And she brought forth a man-child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron. And her child was caught up unto God and to his throne. And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she hath a place prepared of God, that they should feed her there 1,260 days. 1,260 days. And days, understand, equates degrees. Are we clear? Question before you in the square. Right? Right? How much is 3 scores?
60.
What does that relate to? Say it, Brother Tarik.
Roughly an age. It's 12 ages.
12 ages.
That must be important so that you can read them scriptures properly. So that means the old lords are leaving and the new lords are coming in. Thus, the revelation of the new stars. Now, why is the woman, let's go back to chapter 12 of the book of Revealing, in the first instant that presents the woman. And there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, S-U-N, and the moon under her feet. And upon her head a crown of 12 stars. And she being with child, travailing in birth, and pained to be delivered. And there appeared another wonder in heaven. And behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his head, and his tail drew the third part of the stars of heaven, and did cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman, which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. So let's go into the circle, right? Running out of ink with this. Excuse me just a minute. See if I got some more. So basically, you will see this carried with these, excuse me, and sometimes it's spelled with an O. That's any member of the clan under the dragon. Are we clear? Now, what is it that they have with the woman? What is the concern? What is the hypothecate and hypothecation? So let's talk about the lesson of the Book of the Sun. Now, how many of you saw the cover of the questionnaire that Noble Drawley presented to you? How many are familiar with the cover of the questionnaire? Anybody got a questionnaire with them? Questionnaire that's delivered to you. Now watch this. I didn't bring everything with me because I'll be having to carry too much. But just as when I asked the question, how many are familiar with the cover to the questionnaire, I know many of you are, but one maybe hand rose up, if you understand. So that indicates what? Problem. Because 99% of hands should have went up. Because that's your first paragraph. That's your first few sentences, few verses in the book of Revelation. Why does Noble Drawley have woman in his hands and humanity is written on her womb? Because it represents.
She unconscious. Woman unconscious.
Loud. Send it, give them the mic. Yes, she's unconscious. Yes.
Woman unconscious.
Yes. What else is happening? You see 9, what? What do you, look at the graphs. We keep in mind that pictures always speak 1,000 or more words. What is on the cover? Describe it.
I got Noble Drawley told the woman in his arms while she unconscious.
Stay in the mic.
Noble Drawley told the woman unconscious in his arms.
Yes. And how's he standing? 1 foot in the water and 1 foot on a rock. What else do you see? 9 drops of water coming off her body. and humanity is written on her womb. And she's unconscious as if she's drowned, but yet she still lives. And in the background, there's a shadow in the ether, and it has written in that cares of the world. Right? She's apparently, visually, not necessarily pregnant. Yet humanity is written on her womb, clear as day. Who awaits her? And why?
Her sons.
And why is he bringing her out of the water? Out of the cares of the world? She gave him birth first, but she's unconscious. So her sons have to protect her and rescue her so that the remedies will come, because the comforter comes through her. That's why the dragon wants to devour the child, because it represents his demise. Since he's so bad, why don't he just eat her? Then he got 2 meals.
He's scared of her.
Because this, remember, this is Kabbalistic, allegorical, because she's the closest thing that he will find to what you think or know is God, even though she is asleep or unconscious. Well, how do you say God's unconscious? According to how you look at it. If you look at it literally, you will not understand it. If you look at it Kabbalistically from the square, you will understand exactly what you're looking at. So things must be reversed. It must be cleaned up, because she's the key to the salvation of humanity. But the people are looking for the popes, the priesthood, as the vicar and the substitute for the Christ degree on the planet. But not only have they been raping the babies, they've been killing them, raping them, and everything else. But yet the people look to them for guidance through the 7 disciples. But the woman has the 7 stars on her head. Why is no one paying attention to that?
She also doesn't know she's asleep on this house.
Because they've been distracted by the dragon. And that's who they've been following. So let's look at, remember what we talked about before, everything operates, and this is putting in things in perspective a little bit. Right? Past, present, and future. Past, present, and future. Right? You can look at this from another perspective as the egg or the ovum, and then the physical body and the spiritual body. You can look at this as a third rock from the sun. You can look at this as 3 dimensions. You look at this as the equilateral pyramid with 120 degrees angles comprising 360 degrees, but you go to the center to rule. All things are governed consciously from that level in the physical body in governments all over the planet. What must be brought to you to remind you, really to remind you of your responsibility, is that you got to get back to this. They're using it to rule you, but they're using it on the low point, which means everything that has a front has a back. Everything that has a higher vibration also has a lower vibration. Therefore, you must rise from the depths of ignorance into the light. Are we clear?
Yeah, clear.
But in the physical body, you can only be in the moderate. You can only reach the Christ degree in the body. so that you're capable of seeing the life. Do you understand? This is how you're going to kick the life's butt. All right? So, with the principle of the Trinity, the dark side of the priesthood hypothecates present, current. Wish these boards were a little bigger, but let's talk. So they triangulate to devour the child. Hypothecate, which means in the abstract, yet manifested in the physical. They make what you call authoritative claim on the issue of the womb. And thus, the cell, the birth certificate, hypothecates present bodies, which means as we sit in the present form. The marriage certificate mars age, both the age and rage. It is actually a spell cast, because the real union between man and woman is divine. And it is a matre, which is mother, sanction, unity in nature, divine. They introduce the spell cast because it's really marriage with the I. So it's already a cast spell, and then they create certificates to devour the unborn children, and with this certificate, they hypothecate the seeds in the womb, devouring the child. Do you understand? And then for those that she has a chance to produce that they don't destroy, they create the driver's license. And that hypothecates the liberties and the movement of life capacities, your capacity to make a living to feed them children. And all the service goes back to the dragon. And this is why they maintain their secret societies. And this is why they also create the different instruments, particularly for those who are in service to Rome, to aid them in their mission to declare their vicarship or their Godhead position on the earth. And this is where it's mentioned in the book of Thessalonians, when the Christ degree says, I told you all, remember when I was yet with you, that they will declare themselves as God, sitting on the throne, claiming to be God, and you all act like you don't remember that I told you these things? This is where they take the vicarship. And so on a mundane degree, or on a mundane level, you go to the square and the circle and understand what is revealed to you, that it was written to prepare you to beat Goliath. That's how this book is supposed to be used. And it's totally Kabbalistic. Are we clear? That must be understood before you go into it, so don't put the people to sleep. Because the low priests have tampered with it. However, the truth is still there. You just got to know how to dig it out. Do you understand? So they don't mystify you. Now let's talk, let's interchange, and keep in mind what this represents is that this is transferring in the quarter, in the upper quarter, from what? Where are you coming? From Pisces to Aquarius. So you're in this square of the ether plane. But you're in a greater circle that represents a larger clock. And so they're afraid, yet at the same time they're bold. But they know that their time is up. And so we're coming for their tail. Now, do you understand that book? Therefore, everything they do and every instrument that they have issued to you are designed to hypothecate. Are we clear? Now, the hypothecation is, whereas I create an instrument, and just like Dr. Nyla, got them cool kicks on, so Sis said, man, did you see them kicks that sister got? And so I write some certificate and put a bond against her shoes and she don't know about. And then without her permission, sign a name that sounds like hers, and I put it in all caps, which creates a straw. Meanwhile, she's going about her business, and I put a lien on her, and then she starts experiencing all these shot situations. They're called psychic attacks. Then she has to pay me so that she can continue to wear them shoes. That's hers. But yet, physically, I don't have them. But yet, spiritually, I have a claim on them related to a bondage in the physical world. I have devoured her rights and liberties. That is the serfdom that's done through these instruments, from the spirit plane brought into the physical on the dark side of the priesthood. Are we clear?
Yes.
This is what you're fighting. This is what has caused your injury. Then they have the militia, the Jesuit militia, which is headed by the U.S. democracy system, to go to and fro the earth, devouring nations, to steal their resources by virtue of physical hypothecation, to maintain the fraud of the dragon, where he has not necessarily successfully completed his claim on humanity and the earth. Are we clear?
Yes.
And so that it doesn't appear, because they have to deceive you, so it doesn't appear that they're maintaining slavery so they can look innocent, if you get the point. This is why the rule of law, although it comes from a physical canon. You know how they say canon law? Right? Shooting situations. Right? They come from tampering with the books out of their original form, and then they come with canon law. That's the law of the popes. That is demonstrated through the skull and bones activities of undermining the Constitution, which is based in nature's law and nature's God as presented to you in the Declaration of Independence. From deists who were brought into structured government under the authority of the Moroccan Empire, bringing the Europeans into government and giving the titles of ministers plenipotentiary, namely speaking, Benjamin Franklin, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, wearing their fez. And so in your spare time, you're going to do some research into their original papers, and you can see that every one of them condemned the church. Even though publicly they will teach the people that they were right-wing Christians, which they were not. And the reason that's important for you to understand, because you need to understand also why the original republic was set up by the Moors and the European sons were brought in. That's another lesson in itself. Because those European sons and daughters were running away from the tyranny of the popes of Rome in Europe, which is plaguing you today. So let's talk about these issues, and then we're going to go into our interchange. Communicate. Share information so that we can look at these instruments, and then we can look at another way to claim your estate. Are we clear?
Yes.
Which essentially has to be done. And I'm coming from this angle because sometimes you have to come from what people know and take them to other parts that they're not familiar with. Sometimes if you take people to the higher degrees and just speak to them, it goes over their head. So you come with what people know, what they're familiar with, then you take them to the square. Come at them on the square and take them to its Kabbalistic meaning. Are we clear? So that it makes sense to them. So that even if they've tampered with the books, they still can't beat those who know the truth. You see the point? Now, let's go into their secret treaty of Rome. And this, again, and most of you are familiar with this, but I'm putting this in some perspective for others who may be less familiar, so that they can comprehend the work of the dragon. All right? From the congressional records for the United States of North America, we're going to come from 3-point positions. One, with the introduction of and a short discussion of the Secret Treaty of Verona. And this is the foundation of the politics of the dragon. To create or to set up the standard of discovery. Now, as you all understand and as you all know, in the general history books, they refer to the so-called discovery of the Maghreb al-Aqsa, or the Western Hemisphere. That's Morocco, the most extreme west. They say that the Romans, the Europeans, discovered a new world. And Columbus and his boys came to the west, and they discovered a new world. And so the general concept that many people have is that the discovery was like they uncovered something, right? And that's how it's taught. Am I correct? Right. That's how it's taught? That's not what it is, though. It's really the doctrine of discovery. And the doctrine of discovery is set forth by the popes of Rome under the Inquisition operations under Pope Innocent III and through his general, Thomas de Torquemada. And the doctrine of discovery is where they are going to and fro the earth claiming the estates of the true heirs of the planet. Claiming the estates of the heirs of the West. Are we clear? And those claims are by virtue of hypothecation, and some of the claims are out and out murder and altering the estates of the heirs. Altering the estates of the heirs into the states, and that's what you're seeing right now. When you're looking at all the so-called state corporations, they're really hypothecated estates. Are we clear? And constitutes the provinces and regencies of the Moorish Empire. That you will also recognize. You all got this? Y'all got this? You'll also recognize with some of the discussions this is for some of your historical research. And keep in mind, they will change names in order to hide history. So they'll sometimes call the Moorish Empire the Ottoman Empire or the Saracen Empire so that you don't trace it. Are we clear? This is one of the more contemporary meetings for the ongoing hypothecation of the Moorish Empire, which is your birthright. These are snippets so that you can kind of have a view of the politics here, so that you can put in perspective history that absolutely ties to you, but if you're not aware of, you might be looking at history from an 1865 slave mentality, which is not how you should be looking at history. Are we clear?
Clear.
When you